Before that, on BBC One, the 9 o'clock news with Michael Burke.
The £12 million court case that put football on trial is over. Bruce Grobbelaar's walked free. At the end, the jury couldn't agree on a verdict. Princess Diana's in Bosnia tonight, campaigning against landmines. And Britain's cloud has a silver lining, but again, not a trace of gold. Good evening. The former Liverpool and Southampton goalkeeper Bruce Grobbelaar walked free from the court in Winchester at the end of the match-fixing case that's estimated to have cost as much as £12 million. The jury had failed to reach even a majority verdict on the final charge against him. Yesterday, he and 3 others were cleared of conspiracy charges. Today, the judge refused John Fashanu and Hans Sagers their legal costs because he said their own behaviour had been suspicious and led the prosecuting authorities to think the case against them was stronger than it was. Adam Minot was in court.
For 2 3/4 years, Bruce Grobbelaar has been dogged by suspicion that he was at the centre of a web of corruption in football. Today, on the 46th day of the trial, he walked down the steps of Winchester Crown Court, a free man, with no stain on his character. The jury had spent the day deliberating on the final outstanding charge against Bruce Grobbelaar alone. They came back into court this afternoon to tell the judge they could not reach a verdict on this charge. Mr. Justice McCullough said that as the prosecution would offer no further evidence, a verdict of not guilty would be returned. That means, said the judge, looking at Bruce Grobbelaar, that you are discharged. Grobbelaar let out an audible sigh and he walked out of the dock. Outside court afterwards, he spoke of the ordeal he'd been through and the gratitude he now felt.
For the past 2.5 years, I've been living under constant scrutiny from you, the media people. My wife and family have found it hard, very hard to adjust. I thank my wife, family, my friends, my true friends that actually stood by me all this time. It's been very, very difficult for my family and myself, as you can well imagine.
Bruce Grobbelaar's co-defendants, who'd been cleared on all charges yesterday, came to court today to support their fellow accused. They also came to try to recover their legal costs. Lawyers representing John Fashanu and Hans Sagers asked the judge to order that their defence costs be paid for by the Crown because their clients had been unanimously cleared of all the charges against them. John Fashanu's legal bill had been in excess of £500,000 and Hans Sagers had contributed more than £30,000 to his defence costs. Trevor Burke, counsel for John Fashanu, argued in court that not to award costs undermined the not guilty verdicts against his client. He would be asked to pay what amounts to an indirect fine, he said. The judge was completely unmoved and refused to award costs, arguing that the conduct of both men had brought suspicion upon themselves. John Fashanu did not comment, but his solicitor said they would be taking the matter further.
In the light of the judge's decision on costs this morning, we plan to appeal to the House of Lords.
The 2-year police investigation contributed to a total cost of £12 million. Police say not money wasted.
There was a very serious allegation made in a national newspaper. That in itself deserved to be investigated very thoroughly. If you take that alongside the 250,000 people who go to watch Premier League football every week and pay £5 million to do so, I think they deserved to know that when they go through the gates to watch a football match, that they're seeing a game played to the rules as they understand them.
Bruce, round this way, mate. All the defendants went home tonight to try to pick up the pieces of their lives again after nearly 3 years of turmoil. Adam Minot, BBC News at Winchester Crown Court.
We're sorry about the disturbance to your pictures. Apparently we have a problem with our transmitters. The man appointed by the Football Association to investigate match betting and forecasting results has urged the defendants in the case to cooperate with his inquiry. Although he has no power to force them to come forward, Sir John Smith said their cooperation would be helpful. Our correspondent John McIntyre looks now at the background of the case that has put football itself on trial.
As football prepared for its richest ever season, the betting companies are getting ready for a bumper year. The fact that this specialised betting firm in London is expecting up to 1,000 bets a day, everything from the number of corners in a match to who scores the first goal, demonstrates the passion for gambling in football. But after the end of the game's biggest trial, the Football Association announced its own inquiry into issues raised by the case. Tonight, the inquiry chairman spelt out the terms of reference.
Determine whether the rules that the FA imposes, particularly with regard to betting and this issue of forecasting on the results of games, whether those rules should be strengthened or whether there should be rules where there presently aren't any.
For the defendants in the trial, it's been a long 2 years since the allegations were first made in the Sun newspaper. Sun reporters and Chris Vincent, a former business colleague of Bruce Grobbelaar, secretly recorded a number of meetings the two had where Mr. Grobbelaar could be heard admitting he'd thrown football matches.
So 2 minutes into the game, I pushed the ball in the back net. That was the Coventry.
In Coventry's draw with Southampton in September 1994, he said he pushed this shot from beyond Dublin into his net. He told the jury he lied to Chris Vincent to gain his confidence and to try to expose what he thought was a plan to corrupt the game he loved. Some of the great names from British football watched all the games in question, but could see no evidence of either goalkeeper trying to let goals in deliberately.
I had to look at all the matches involving the two players. 5 matches for Grobbelaar, 19 matches for Sagers, and at the back of my mind always there were 2 areas. Is there anything untoward from a goalkeeping point of view? Answer, after watching them and reviewing them time and time again, spent hours and hours freeze-framing, moving things forward, nothing untoward.
The prosecution tried to show that large sums of money deposited at this bank in central London in the accounts of Hans Sagers and John Fashanu had been the proceeds of match fixing for an illegal Far East gambling syndicate. But Hans Sagers argued the money had been the proceeds of perfectly legal match forecasting and from money Mr. Fashanu gave for a property deal. The jury rejected allegations that Bruce Grobbelaar went to John Fashanu's luxury home to receive £40,000 for fixing a match in 1993. The irrepressible John Fashanu, now retired from football and best known as a television personality, had tried unsuccessfully to get the case against him thrown out during the trial for lack of evidence. All have found the ordeal of the past months very onerous.
Carry on with life as normal as you can. But yes, you know, it hasn't only affected myself, it's affected a whole lot of people. My family, my wife's family, everybody.
However, all are free men now, and to the relief of everyone involved in football, the game has been spared the embarrassment of a deeply damaging web of corruption in its midst. John McIntyre, BBC News.